Thank you for coming. I'm sure His Majesty will be delighted to meet you.
Unfortunately, Prince Joshua is not home at the moment.
But you are welcome to hang around and wait.
When will he be home?
Well, as soon as he's done with his shark hunt. Let's watch. Hey everybody, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. You know, I realized that I haven't blogged a single shark film since the time when I blogged The Meg back during the terrible year of 2020, the year when everybody went under lockdown and went stir crazy. No thanks to the late COVID welder's virus, which was caused by his bat minions. Anyway, while I still have yet to watch The Meg sequel, I have seen a few other shark films like Shark Night, 47 Meters Down, Sand Sharks, Soul Surfer, and DreamWorks Shark Tale. Anyway, for today's blog, I'm going to look back at a classic shark film which just turned 50 years old this year. So, without further ado, released on June 20th, 1975, the movie is Jaws. So, on for the plot of the movie. When a young woman is killed by a shark while skinny dipping near the New England tourist town of Amity Island, Police Chief Martin Brody wants to close the beaches, but Mayor Larry Vaughn overrules him, fearing that the loss of tourist revenue will cripple the town. Ichthyologist Matt Hooper and grizzled ship captain Sam Quint offer to help Brody capture the killer beast, and the trio engage in an epic battle of man versus nature. So, what do I think? Well, in my opinion, this has got to be one of the most classic and legendary shark films ever. And to further explain what I mean, let's move on to Mustang notes. Now, the movie is based on the novel by Peter Benchley, whom was inspired by a series of shark attacks off the coast of New Jersey from July 1st to July 12th of 1916, in which 4 people were killed and 1 was injured. Plus, Benchley was responsible for writing the first drafts of the script. However, writer/actor Carl Gottlieb rewrote said script during principal photography. More about that later. In the director's chair was legendary filmmaker Steven Spielberg, and we all know about his movie resume. Anyway, the film was mostly shot on location at Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts from May to October 1974. Jaws was the very first motion picture to be shot on the ocean and consequently had a troubled production, going over budget and schedule. As the art department's mechanical sharks often malfunctioned, Spielberg decided to mostly suggest the shark's presence employing an ominous and minimalist theme created by composer John Williams to indicate its impending appearances. Spielberg and others have often compared this suggestive approach to that of director Alfred Hitchcock. Universal Studios released the film in over 450 screens, an exceptionally wide release for a major studio picture at the time, accompanied by an extensive marketing campaign with heavy emphasis on television spots and tie-in merchandise. Regarded as a watershed moment in motion picture history, Jaws was the prototypical summer blockbuster and won several awards for its music and editing. It was the highest grossing film in history until the release of Star Wars 2 years later. Both films were pivotal in establishing the modern Hollywood business model, which pursues high box office returns from action and adventure films with simple, high-concept premises, released during the summer in thousands of theaters and advertised heavily. Jaws was followed by 3 sequels, none of which involve Steven Spielberg or Peter Benchley, as well as many imitative thrillers. In 2001, the Library of Congress selected Jaws for preservation in the United States National Film Registry. Now, I must confess something to all of you. I wasn't actually introduced to Jaws by watching the movie per se. You see, a long time ago, back during August of 1995, I was introduced to Jaws during my first visit to Universal Studios Hollywood, and since I was about 4 to 5 years old back then, seeing the shark pop out of the water right next to the studio tour tram was very frightening, just like with my experience with King Kong several years before the set caught fire. However, it was during my high school age when I finally got the chance to watch the movie when I rented it from Netflix before they went from rentals to streaming. And despite the fact that I watched one of the sequels during social skills class before then, courtesy of my teacher, Mr. Andrew Hall, I found Jaws to be a very classical monster film, and I can't believe that it's 50 years old this year. By the way, there are several reviewers whom I know about who got to talk about Jaws on their review shows before me. They were Jaime Tude, the host of From Pages to Pictures, along with Huey Toonmore from Huey's Animated Movie Reviews, who put Jaws at number 2 on his top 11 next best scares of childhood during the early 2010s. Isaac the Media Hunter, who got to review Jaws and its sequels back in 2020 during the horrible lockdown, and my friend the movie fan from the movie universe got to share his thoughts on Jaws back in June of this year. Also, I need to mention that during the making of this video, one of my friends from Facebook, Kyle Harada, has been inserting my pony forms into these Jaws-related pictures, some featuring the main 7. Anyway, the thing that I like regarding this movie is the cinematography, and I like how Steven Spielberg and his crew made Martha's Vineyard look like Amity Island. Plus, I like the underwater shots, which were shot at the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios water tank in Culver City, the ocean near Santa Catalina Island, California, and editor Verna Field's swimming pool in Encino, California. Also, I think the final climax at sea is very thrilling, heart-pounding, and epic. Plus, there are a few scary moments in this movie, like during the scene where Hooper and Brody dive underwater to investigate the half-sunken boat of local fisherman Ben Gardner. And what do they find? Well, not only do they find a large great white shark tooth, but also Gardner's severed head.
Whoa! Dude, that's creepy.
But the true highlight of this movie is the shark, whom the crew and the fans nicknamed Bruce. Now, as I said earlier, I was first introduced to this legendary movie monster at Universal Studios Hollywood back in August 1995, and he was sort of the reason why I was scared to swim out into the ocean as a kid, especially during Boy Scout swim tests. Also, you might find this funny, but Bruce made a cameo in my second elementary school choir show, A World of Entertainment, and he was parodied during the Chipmunks Go to the Movies intro. Anyway, despite the fact that Bruce has gone through some technical difficulties behind the scenes, I think he's got to be one of the most classical sea beasts in film history. And I think the score, composed by John Williams, whenever the shark is coming, is absolutely intense. But what's really scary about Bruce is, well, like Smaug from The Hobbit and the Basilisk from Harry Potter, we don't even see him until about way later. Mostly all we get are either a fin, someone getting attacked, or the camera being used as the shark's point of view. And when we finally do see the shark near the end of the movie, it's totally unexpected. By the way, I must mention something that I learned during the early 2010s. You see, during the final climax, the shark manages to launch itself out of the water and slam into the back of the boat, causing it to sink. Back then, people thought something like that could never happen in real life. But several years ago, scientists and photographers discovered that great whites actually do have the ability to launch themselves out of the water in order to catch a meal. And that's basically all I got for Mustang notes. So let's move on to the film's cast. Let's start with Police Chief Martin Brody, played by the late Roy Scheider, who also got to appear in 2 of the Jaws sequels. In my eyes, despite being an outsider and initially struggling with his fear of the open water, I think Brody is a loyal and dutiful man, and after hearing about Chrissy's disappearance, I like that he takes charge of hunting down the shark, and I like that he tries to keep everybody on Amity Island safe. Plus, I think Brody has some of the most memorable and quotable lines in cinema history. Next up is Matt Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, whom I remember from American Graffiti, Henry Selick's James and the Giant Peach, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the Island of Misfit Toys, and he had an appearance during the prologue of the terrible 2010 Piranha movie. Anyway, Hooper is a young oceanographer and shark expert from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Massachusetts, who was hired to investigate a series of deadly shark attacks on Amity Island. The things that I like about Hooper is that he relies on scientific methods and data to understand and address the shark threat. He's well versed in shark behavior and marine biology, and he approaches situations with a logical mindset. Our next character is Captain Sam Quint, played by the late Robert Shaw. Quint is best known as the grizzled, shark-obsessed captain of the fishing boat Orca, who helps Brody and Hooper hunt for the rogue great white shark terrorizing Amity Island. To me, Quint is a strong-willed, fearless, and somewhat eccentric individual who has a keen understanding of the sea and its creatures. Plus, I find it interesting that Quint was a World War II veteran who survived the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, and I thought the part where he gets killed by the shark was a really tragic moment. The last character to talk about is Mayor Larry Vaughn, played by the late Murray Hamilton, who got to be in The Graduate, The Amityville Horror, and Jaws 2. To me, Vaughn is best described as a real political douchebag, due to him being unwise and a money-driven leader who prioritizes the island's economic prosperity from tourism over the safety of its citizens, and that he makes questionable decisions like resisting the closure of the beaches despite mounting evidence of a dangerous shark. Actions that ultimately contributed to the deaths of several individuals. And now, on to my final words. Overall, Jaws has got to be one of the most legendary films ever made. Despite some setbacks and some technical difficulties, the cinematography is well done, the writing is excellent, The main characters, Brody, Hooper, and Quint, are memorable, and the actors all do a fantastic job, even though one character was very unlikable. Plus, the main star, Bruce the Shark, truly deserves his place as one of the most classic and scariest monsters in cinema history, and John Williams' score that accompanies the monster is really terrifying. Lastly, we should all thank Steven Spielberg for putting this movie together. Yeah, I understand that it was a lot of hard work for him and his crew, but it was still worth it in the end. However, despite the fact that this movie is PG, I wouldn't let younger kids watch this movie on their own, though. Anyway, I give this movie a full 100%. Also, I hope everybody gets a chance to experience its 50th anniversary re-release, which will be from August 29th through September 4th. Sadly, I won't be able to do that due to the fact that I'll be in Europe during that time. But anyway, that's all for now, folks. Be sure to join me next time as we look at DreamWorks' first live-action remake, Mustang Power.
I hope he's ready. For the next episode, Joshua, we will meet in person.
Sharks have row after row of razor-sharp teeth. Only my full-body force field protects me from getting a good bite.